Our capacitor quiz, 4 capacitors, one 12-volt constant voltage source. We're looking for equivalent capacitance that could replace the 4 capacitors connected to the 12-volt supply. We also want the charge for the 120 microfarad capacitor and the volts for the 150 microfarad capacitor. First, we identify the junctions or nodes in the circuit, and we have 3 junctions A, B, C. Now, I'd like to use the technique where, especially when there is a single voltage source, we take the nodes that connect to that source, A and B, and imagine pulling them apart, A to the left and B to the right. For that technique, we do not need to see the voltage source. We know it connects to A and B. So there, I've pulled things apart and made things horizontal, and that may make it simpler to identify series and parallel combinations. And I'm showing leads coming from node A and node B that go to the 12-volt supply that's not shown. And so the only place to start here is the 120 in parallel with the 60. And so we add 120 and 60 in parallel to get 180, add that to the table. And then we continue. Now we see we have a series combination of the 180 and the 150. And for series, we take the inverse of sum of inverses, or product over sum. 180 times 150 divided by 330 is 81.8, and add that to the table. Last but not least, the 81.8 is in parallel with the 30. We simply add and get 111.8, and that's our last row, and that is our equivalent capacitance. And now we backtrack, and we see that the 12 volts connected to A and B is across the equivalent capacitance, but because that equivalent capacitance replaced 2 in parallel, look at the nodes A and B, the 12 volts is across the 30, and the 12 volts is also across the 81.8. So we now have 3 rows where we can calculate charge. Charge in microcoulombs is the product of capacitance in microfarads and volts. And now we backtrack, right? So we can say that the 81.8 replaced the 180 and the 150 in series charge is the same. So the 981.8 microcoulombs is also the charge for the 180 and the 150. But now we have these 2 rows where we can calculate volts. So let's calculate volts as charge divided by capacitance. And one of these 2 results, the volts for the 150, 6.55 volts, that was one of the questions. The volts for the 180 is 5.45, but the 180 replaces the 60 and 120 in parallel, where volts is the same. So the 5.45 volts is also the volts for the 60 and the volts for the 120. Product CV gets us charge, and we've completed the table, and we've discovered the charge for the 120 microfarad capacitor. So highlighted in red are the 3 answers to the 3 questions, but the table is the complete solution. And that is our circuit quiz.